Actually, this particular presentation goes back to the Hollow Earth Insider in the late 90s, I guess, when we got into the actual tunneling stuff of the ancients, not with the current day tunneling machines, and some of the contentions that the ancients tunneled rigorously and continuously. So this is entitled, of course, Pascal's Porsche, a high technology machine in the ancient Americas. And this is where most of this takes place. Chiapas, de Corzo, all down to Copan. And Chiapa de Corzo is the general area where Palenque is located. Can't really hear it. It should be going through that speaker, but I'm not sure why. Anyway, this is an excerpt from, it's not Ancient Aliens, but another program a lot like that. And it portrays the lid, which is what we're really after here. And this, what you see here, is the Temple of Inscriptions, the home of the infamous sarcophagus of Pascal, or Pascal Votan. It's a little bit deceptive on just how big this thing is. Each of those steps you see there is, I believe, 22 inches. 22 inches. They're pretty good size, meaning that the people who climbed up and down those steps were probably pretty good size. Yeah, 22 inches. I mean, it's it's a big step.
That's out of cold.
You know, that's a third the height of the natives down there. Well, actually, it's a little more than a third the height of most of the Maya who live in that area. So here we have a comparison between the Temple of Inscriptions and a Cornish castle from the same period, or what's left of the Cornish castle, Tintagel, which is often associated with King Arthur. And okay, these two were constructed at the same time. What's wrong with this picture? This one was in the jungle being eaten by trees for 1,300 years. And that one stood on an open, windy plain, admittedly with a little bit of acid rain over the entire time, not just since man started burning coal. But that one's been rebuilt 3 times that we know of, 2 or 3 times. And yet this one has been under cover of jungle for basically 1,000 years. This is where the science, quote unquote science, of Palenque and Lord Pascal lives. Alberto Ruz Liller discovered the entrance to the tomb of the Mayan king Pascal Votan in 1948. And dug his way down, took him 4 dig seasons. So basically, we've only known about this lid since 1952. And Dennis showed this graphic before of the passageway down to it. And once upon a time, just a few years ago, there was actually an online virtual tour of this passage. And you could, virtually on the internet walk down here and get to the bottom. An acquaintance of mine by the name of John Haskell may or may not be the reason you can't go in it at all today, because he was carrying his small video camera. And it's always wet and damp and nasty in that passageway, and he slipped and almost killed himself. So they decided to do the American thing, the U.S. thing, rather than the Mexican thing. They avoided liability by closing it down. Anyway, the science teaches us about Pascal's sarcophagus lid. The scene depicted on the sarcophagus lapidary stone, the big stone on top, represents the instant of Pascal's death and his fall to the underworld. Now, Dennis addressed that a while ago, and both of us think that's complete crap. A strip of heaven called a sky band frames the entire scene. I can get back to that scene, maybe. That scene. The sky band is what goes around the outside. Now, I'm going to show you something else here. They talk about the sky band a lot. What they don't talk about much is this edge right here. There are also inscriptions on this, on the 3 sides that we can see. We do not have a good picture of what's on that back wall. So wait a minute. If we're only reading The sky band, the parts around the outside, what's the rest of it tell us? Well, we don't know yet. We'll get to that in a minute. The skeleton, the main skeleton, there's more than one person there. The main skeleton found associated with that tomb was 33 to 35, not 86, as a temple of inscriptions imply about Lord Pascal and his reign. The 5 occupants of the tomb were neither local Maya, nor were they Mesoamerican at all. One of them was a preteen female of probably European or possibly South Asian descent. Mexico's not giving up the remains, because it wasn't just a skeleton, it was mummified, for anybody to study. It's not going to happen, don't even go there. The other 4 people who were in this tomb complex, because it wasn't just the tomb that's associated with the sarcophagus. Let's go back to that picture. Where'd it go? Where is my picture? That picture. You can barely see that there's an opening over here on the side. You never read about it in any of the textbooks, but yet it's in this photograph. You know it's there. There were other bodies and other tombs in this complex. 5 total bodies. I mentioned a young teen, preteen female, human. The other 4 bodies in there were not necessarily human. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, so we've been studying the lapidary stone only since 1952, when he finally dug his way down to it. No one besides von Däniken has seriously challenged the scientific interpretation since 1968. The interpretation is of a 1,300-year-old Mayan inscription, and they'll tell us, "Oh yeah, we know how to translate that." But no errors. We know exactly how to translate everything Mayan. What? I mean, you can't even interpret your own constitution the same way every time. So what's up with that? Well, we know. We know, because we're good. And who are you to challenge us? You don't have any degree. So, nobody got some common sense. We're going to go there. Now, the New Agers, they look at it a little different. They say when Pascal Botan arrived in this world, he was already enlightened to the wisdom and brought the history of time with him. Now, the history of time in a New Age sense is that Pascal Botan and entities like him existed before time began. And that's okay. If that's what they want to do, that's certainly their take on it. The history of the Mayan glyphs is a little more mundane, but only slightly. And it does mention other continents, kind of, depending on how you interpret it. And even some of the academics admit that. And yes, they know everything, so that has to be right. What von Däniken taught us was that Pascal was himself an ancient astronaut, and that the seat he was on was a launch couch, going back this way rather than leaning forward, that his sarcophagus lid portrays a rocket-propelled vehicle, and that he seeded Mayan culture with advanced knowledge and technology. We'll come back to all those points in a minute. What we're taught about the man Pascal Botan, the body that was in there, instead of 5 bodies, the body. When the body of Pascal Botan was found in the Temple of the Inscriptions in Palenque, he was holding a cubic geometric shape in his right hand and another spherical form in his left hand. And they were made of flint. And that's about all we really know about his worldly possessions. However, there's more to this story than one might imagine. He was polydactyl. Now this is the main body, the royal body, the largest of the bodies that was in this tomb complex. And according to Lullaire, to his friends, not to the Mexican government, not to the archaeological community, but to his buddy, in fact, the buddy to whom Lullaire owed money. This thing was 8 feet 4.5 inches tall, had 7 fingers on each hand, and had little tiny nubs on his forehead, just little tiny nubs. Wasn't enough to call horns, but it was knots, not due to injury, just odd growths on the forehead. And it was a low forehead. I don't know where Fritz is, but he would be very interested in this part. That this skull form was closest to a Cro-Magnon, much closer to Cro-Magnon than to modern human. So that's the part that I won't publish because I don't have permission.